Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for attending our Action SA press conference. And I think what we're dealing with today is something that will interest all South Africans. And it's my great pleasure to relate a story with you that our president told the six of us when we came to Parliament. Obviously, six is not a big number, but our president told us to come to Parliament and fight like we're 60. And I must say, every time I come in and address a press conference, it really does feel like we are many, many more than the six of us, especially when it comes to private members' legislation. Action SA has invested an enormous amount of time and expertise into building a legislative program that reforms the executive to save billions of rands, increasing transparency in government, to protect our democracy, and to fighting crime and corruption. We do this for one reason: to demonstrate that our country's problems are not inevitable, that they are a result of a failure of political will under the GNU, and with the unyielding political will of Action SA, they can be fixed. And our slogan is very simple. It says, "Let's fix South Africa." Today, every single Action SA member of Parliament has introduced legislation, something no other political party in South Africa's democratic history has achieved. Despite only having 6 members of Parliament, Action SA has introduced more private members' bills than parties many times our size, including the 39-member Economic Freedom Fighter Party and the 58-member MK Party, which holds the title of official opposition. And this reinforces in my mind the saying that says it's not what you say, but what you do that counts. And Action SA has shown through deeds that we are definitely addressing the legislative vacuum when it comes to fighting corruption. At Action SA's 2023 policy conference, where more than 700 delegates attended, we declared corruption public enemy number one. And that makes me really proud as the parliamentary leader of a party that deals with corruption on a daily basis, that we have identified that corruption is enemy number one. My colleague Alan Beasley, sitting next to me yesterday when he was introducing this piece of legislation, he says South Africa is really good at identifying corruption, but really very, very poor at doing anything about corruption. This is why we've been introducing a slew of legislation in our anti-corruption reform package. It attacks corruption at every stage. It disrupts corrupt networks, protects those that expose corruption, strengthens prosecutions, and ensures meaningful consequences for those who steal from the South African people. The Fallen Whistleblowers Bill, introduced by Honourable Malebo Kobe, honours courageous South Africans who expose corruption, such as Babita Deokaran, by strengthening whistleblower protections, establishing secure reporting mechanisms, rewarding the recovery of stolen public funds, and enabling private prosecutions where the state fails to act. And we have seen the state fail to act in so many seminal cases. Our Zero Tolerance Corruption Bill, introduced by Honourable Deroline James, introduces mandatory minimum prison sentences linked directly to the value of corruption committed. Corruption has become a low-risk, high-reward crime. We intend to reverse that equation. Today we are unveiling our Blacklist Corrupt Suppliers Bill. Essentially, it is the Public Procurement Amendment Bill, introduced by my colleague Alan Beasley. This will be our 7th bill formally introduced to Parliament. It seeks to close a critical enforcement gap by ending the Mexican standoff that has developed between accounting officers, where responsibilities endlessly shifted by politicians and administrators, while corrupt suppliers continue to benefit from public procurement. This legislation ensures that those responsible can no longer avoid taking the necessary action to protect public funds. Before the end of this year, Action SA will also introduce our NPA independence bills, designed to strengthen the independence and effectiveness of the National Prosecuting Authority, and our Scorpions 2.0 bill, which will restore specialized independent anti-corruption investigations and prosecutions through the dissolution of the Hawks and the reform of the Troubled Investigating Directorate Against Corruption. Ladies and gentlemen, Madlanga Commission has become fascinating for millions of South Africans. It is an inspiration that if you are prepared to deal with the nettle of corruption and expose it and hold those to account, it can be overcome. Despite what some politicians might say about the Madlanga Commission, I want to put it on record that Action SA fully supports every single effort of the Madlanga Commission, and we need more of that in everyday life in South Africa. In closing, our caucus has invested countless hours into developing these reforms because South Africans deserve a parliament that does more than debate problems. They deserve one that legislates solutions and political parties who have the guts and will to do so, like Action SA. I'm immensely proud to work alongside colleagues who are dedicated to the cause of fixing South Africa. With that, I hand over to my colleague Alan Beasley, who has been dealing with this particular piece of legislation, but has been intimately involved in all of our pieces of private members' legislation dealing with corruption.
Greetings everybody, and welcome to the formal introduction of the Blacklist Corrupt Suppliers Bill. So this bill started with a simple question that we've been asking ourselves as Action SA, and which South Africans should be also asking themselves, is how is it possible that investigations done by the SIU where they've named corrupt suppliers and they've recommended that they be blacklisted are still able to do business with the state, are still able to win state contracts and haven't been blacklisted? How is it possible? And the answer there to exposes one of the greatest weaknesses in South Africa's fight against corruption, and also highlights the current ineffectiveness of the SIU. The thinking behind this bill started in Scopa about a year ago when the SIU and the presidency came to deliver report to Scopa, and the presidency oversees the SIU recommendations. And in that committee meeting, the committee was advised that of the 467 recommendations made by the SIU for companies to be blacklisted, for corrupt suppliers to be blacklisted, only one had been blacklisted. I was absolutely flabbergasted, and News 24 actually reported that Beasley was visibly angry. I was angry because it's just a slap in the face of South Africans that 1 out of 467 corrupt suppliers had been blacklisted, and those that hadn't been blacklisted included companies named in the Zondo Commission, included those named in State Capture, included companies like Digital Vibes, included companies in the PPE scandal, and included companies involved in procurement, in horror procurement procedures in the past. And none of them had been blacklisted, and they still are free to deal with the state. So the question arose to us is, how is that possible? How is that possible that 1 out of 467 corrupt companies have been blacklisted? So we started doing a detailed investigation into this to answer the question, how is it possible? And it started off with us sending us a complaint to the public protector, and we've been advised that they're quite far down in their investigation. So hopefully that should be made public quite soon. We also submitted numerous written questions in Parliament, and through that we were able to expose that not one of the 207 companies identified in the Tembisa scandal had been blacklisted. Those companies are still able to deal with the state. There are companies out there that are possibly still supplying skinny jeans to the value of 2,500 per skinny jeans when we've got patients dying in the hospital. How is that possible? How is it possible that those companies are still able to deal with the state when we've got people dying in public hospitals? The SIU spent millions on these investigations, billions, and these companies are still free to deal with the state. We also scrutinized SIU reports, and I spent a particular long time scrutinizing Proclamation R9 of 2021, which looked into corruption within the eThekwini municipality in the infill housing project. And I must say, it brought me to tears to actually read that report and just see the lack of consequences. And it is so bad that the corruption named in that report is still happening today. Corrupt developers that were named in the report are still doing business with the eThekwini municipality. And the losers are the residents of Phoenix, eThekwini as a whole, and all South Africans, because essentially the eThekwini municipality, the counting officer, has pulled a middle finger to the SIU, to the residents of Phoenix, to the residents of eThekwini's, and for South Africans who want the fight against corruption to go ahead. So that was the investigation. We were asking ourselves, how is it possible? And the investigation has revealed that there's a massive legislation gap that needs to be addressed, and hence the bill. And this bill intends to close the gap, and through that we've made several proposals. And the first proposal to close the gap is to end the indefinite delay in the actual blacklisting process. At the moment, there's absolutely no time frame. So, an accounting officer in a procurement institution can get a report from the SIU. There's no time frames in which they have to start the blacklisting process. So they can sit on that report indefinitely, and that is what is currently happening. They're getting the SIU report, they're opening their drawer, they're putting the report in there, and there's no time frames to do it. Absolutely bizarre. The second proposal is to give the procurement office in National Treasury more intervention powers, because at the moment National Treasury can do nothing about it when a public institution, a procurement institution, doesn't blacklist a supplier. They can do nothing about it. And we've asked National Treasury, and they said there's nothing that they can do about it. So this bill will give them more power to intervene when a procurement institution doesn't start the blacklisting process. The public procurement from National Treasury can implement it. And this is, our sense is this is an excellent proposal, because ultimately National Treasury is the head of governance in this country in terms of the public purse. So they need to intervene, and this bill gives them the power to intervene. Thirdly, the third proposal is greater transparency in the system. The Public Procurement Office must regularly update the blacklisting thing, but also procurement institutions need to regularly update their own blacklisting processes, and they also need to highlight where they have an institution blacklisting, and they need to give reasons for that, and that needs to be publicly available so that the public can consider and review decisions made where institutions have decided not to blacklist entities. And the last proposal is gives effect to the SIU recommendations, because at the moment when the SIU makes the recommendations, there's no mechanism to actually start the blacklisting process. So when a SIU makes a recommendation for an entity to be blacklisted, the process starts and the timeframes kick in. So it gives immediate effect to SIU recommendations. So in conclusion, over the last 5 years, Action SA has followed evidence that has led us from Scopa to the Public Protector, from Tembisa Hospital to eThekwini Municipality, from parliamentary questions to laying criminal charges against the eThekwini municipal manager. And every road leads to the same conclusion, that as a country, we are great at finding corruption. We are pathetic at preventing corruption. Absolutely pathetic. This bill will help us to prevent corruption in the public space. It would go a long way to preventing corruption. Thank you.
Alan, thank you very much for presenting that in your inimitable fashion. You can hear that Alan is passionate about this. But he used another really important word, which I think is the right word to use to conclude this presentation. Alan used the word angry. We are angry. As Action SA, we are angry about the state of affairs around public procurement. We are angry that it took many, many years to get Edwin Sodi finally blacklisted. We did that. We are angry that Mr. Morgan Maumela, responsible for the Tembisa heist, is still not being held to account. So anyone who says, why are you so angry? It's because we are angry. I will never forget when Derelene James went to present her plans and proposals around dealing with crime in the Western Cape to the president. When he spoke to her, he said, Derelene, I remember you. You were so nice. What's happened to you? Why are you so angry? She said, because I'm angry at the loss of life. We are angry about corruption. We are not going to go along to get along. And we are going to challenge all the political parties in Parliament that are serious and honest about trying to end corruption to support this legislation of ours. And we will see where the chips fall when this legislation comes before Parliament. It will show the parties that are pro-corruption, and it will show the parties that are anti-corruption. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'll now hand over to members of the public and members of the media to put any questions to us that you might have. Thank you. Go ahead.
So we have 4 questions. The first one is, will this bill prevent corrupt suppliers from changing their name and recycling themselves in the public procurement system, as we've seen before? Secondly, if you could just kindly outline sort of the timeline when this bill will appear before Parliament, what's the status of the bill, and when it'll be presented to committee, etc. Thirdly, whether you've interacted with key stakeholders in the public procurement space and how you foresee, for example, the Special Investigating Unit, the SIU, National Treasury and others responding to this legislation. And then fourth and finally, have you lobbied other parties yet, and how do you foresee other parties in Parliament responding to this legislation?
Thank you very much. I'll try and deal with some of these, and obviously Alan will come in, and we might have to get one of our staff members to also give some input around the actual timelines. But first of all, we very definitely are focusing in this legislation to prevent the recycling of the same people under different company names, because corruption flourishes in an environment where shelf companies are used to mask collusion with the Public Procurement Office. And I want to state this very clearly. Corruption doesn't happen in a vacuum. Corruption isn't just a government issue. Corruption happens in tandem with government and the private sector. And it's all about collusion. You find one niche person in the procurement system, but it can't just be that one person. Yes, they can facilitate, but it needs political countenance. And that's where the real problem is. You've got an administrator inside undermining the procurement system, and you have an official turning a blind eye or putting pressure on decision makers. So we very definitely are going to focus on preventing recycling. Have we engaged key stakeholders? Absolutely we have, and Alan will talk about engagement with the SIU and Treasury, etc. But we speak to organizations like OUTA. When we are busy with this determination of this legislation, we put it out for public engagement, and the public engagement is wonderful and it's endorsing, but they don't pass the legislation. It's legislators, political parties, Parliament that passes the legislation. So yes, we will lobby every single political party, and as I said, their commitment to fighting corruption will be shown on the floor of Parliament, where their hands go, whether they go up or stay down when it comes to voting for this legislation. But we are very frustrated that it takes so long to process private members' legislation. If the executive or a minister wants to have legislation passed, they bring it to Parliament and pass it. And don't forget now that the GNU have got 70% support in Parliament, and the GNU just goes along to get along. They forget their previous fights about corruption. Now that they're in government, they just seamlessly go along. So it gets more and more difficult to pass private members' legislation. So we want the public to please endorse us and encourage us and put pressure on their own political parties. Alan?
Yeah, thanks, Athol. So in terms of the first question, in terms of shelf companies, and that in many instances when the SIU put down a company to be blacklisted, they also include the directors' names too. So that should prevent that happening going forward. It's when directors of companies are actually also included in the blacklisting. So the SIU does that in many instances. And the one that I looked at in the eThekwini matter, there were 4 companies involved, but they also listed 7 directors too. So that's an important aspect in that regard. In terms of time frames, what will happen is this bill will get gazetted on Friday, and then it'll go for public comment for 30 days, and then it'll formally be sent to the speaker to get the whole process going. But I think, as Athol says, if all political parties are in favor of fighting corruption, like they say, we should get endorsement, and this bill should travel through Parliament, and we'll keep the public updated. We feel stumbling blocks, and we'll name the stumbling blocks so those people can be held to account. In terms of key stakeholders, when I became visibly angry, I wasn't the only one that was visibly angry in the meeting. So was the SIU. The SIU is a highly efficient organization, and actually highlights what a state entity can be like. They are brilliant at what were doing, but you can see they were exasperated by the fact that their recommendations hadn't been implemented. They were actually, you could actually see it in their faces. They were devastated, and we've got support from them, and I've actually had messages of actual support for this bill. And also in one of our questions to National Treasury, they said they're fully behind changes in the public procurement to give them more intervention power. So I think in terms of the SIU and National Treasury, we're going to have 100% buy-in. I think that's it.
Thank you, Alan. I just want to conclude by saying that parochialism actually aids corruption. So what that means is that there are political parties in Parliament that might be opposed to corruption, but because we are proposing the legislation, they're not going to support it. Now, as far as we're concerned, that's petty, it's parochial, and it's not putting South Africa first. So our challenge to all political parties is come with us to put South Africa first. It doesn't matter who brings the legislation, it's the outcome of the legislation. And if you're in doubt about why it's important to have this kind of legislation, just consider, put the Madlanga Commission aside, consider a current court case that's happening right now with the former Speaker and Minister of Defence, Mapisa Nqakula, in court, where procurement was being bent by the executive authority in order to facilitate and lever funds for herself. That is the essence of corruption. It's about putting self first and not the country. So our challenge in Parliament is to get political parties to put South Africans first.